Many people regard you as a personification of Ubuntu. What do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects. Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, you have done something very important which will be appreciated.
On the 22nd of April 2018, the open source report, which we partner with Cranston Software to bring it to you, we try to do it every week, but sometimes we miss, sort of as they say, fall back. But nonetheless, we are here with the open source report, and on WBRN Radio as part of the family and the Boston Red Network. We are moving closer and closer to getting all of our programs in one family. We see it as an ongoing a project where you can go to bostonred.org and find the various apps there. I was from iHeart, it's from Stitcher, from Spreaker, and so forth and so on. On YouTube, we'll get all those links there. They're basically the same thing. We hope to expand at least the YouTube part of this, where we can have some visuals. That's in the works, as one would say, and also get things from third-party people. I don't know if we'll include it in this one, but there was the car from Uber that caused the death of a person in Arizona, and Dave Jones of the EV, the Electronic Engineers blog. He's based in Sydney, Australia, did a teardown on one of the devices. I believe it was from Volvo, about, I believe it was a 10-year-old device. They've upgraded the firmware in it, but the point he made is that the device in the Uber vehicle in Arizona was Uber's own device. It had nothing to do with Volvo, and there's several other of these autonomous or self-driving features have been in automobiles for a number of years now, and they have not had fatalities, and it's becoming more and more mature. I wouldn't call it a mature situation, but autonomous cars or self-driving cars are being tested in many, many places, and many groups, Tesla and others, and we've at Cranston started to get into it, a very preliminary stage of autonomous software, self-driving software that is open source, and we're looking to people that have already developed it. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Mostly to promote open source self-driving vehicles. That is the whole idea there, because we focus both on software, open source, Libra software, and hardware. So basically two missions here. Dave Jones also brings in a lot of open source hardware, whether it be from Pi, Agreo. There are a lot of those. He was messing around with a digital project. We've seen these where numbers appear randomly or what have you. But anyway, we'll link to the EB blog. Let's firstly go to the kernel. The stable kernel is 4.16.3. Let's see, long-term kernel is 4.53. I think we have 4.14.34, and that is part of Slackware Current. We finished updating Slackware Current. Didn't update the kernel this week. There was no update. But we, a few weeks ago, went to the newer Slackware 15 edition. So thus, we've been upgrading it to the latest. And we had an extensive upgrade this week of many programs. Some of them have been with us the last 20 years, and there are some new ones there. The Slackware edition is one of the better editions out there, at least in our opinion, for development work. If you want to do development, all of the tools are there, or you can put them into the Slackware edition using various methods. In other words, you can use programs that are on Ubuntu or programs that are on Red Hat. They all can be there. You use the basic tarball. But anyway, let's move along here. While I'm here, let me just get this. This is a testing Linux. We've used it before at University Chile. Chile is, and if you're going to do some penetration testing, we employed you to put it on your system. Now, let's see, we can get the latest here. Okay. This is on the Windows subsystem. We won't go into that 2018, but there is a 2018 release out here. And the reason we're jumping here, we're talking about this Chile 2018 0.1 release, the first release of this year. This is the final release. It contains all updated packages, bug fixes since the 2017 0.3 release. That was in November. From the Meltdown and Spire Excitement, if you remember that, to a couple of other nasty bugs we worked out. We have our work cut out for us, but we prevailed in time. So the upgrade is to the same kernel we're using, the 14.4 kernel. That's the Chile Linux 2018. Has a shiny new, it basically 4.14.2 kernel. The new kernel always has lots of new features, and the 4.14 kernel is no exception. AMD security memory encryption support. We use AMD processors here at Cranston and have way over 20 years, 25 years since AMD has been out there. Most people don't realize AMD has been around a very, very long time. It was on a lot of machines there as a lower cost alternative at the time to the Intel family of processors. Secure memory encryption is a feature that will be in the newer AMD processors that enable automatic encryption and decryption of DRAM. The addition of this feature could mean that systems will no longer, in theory, be vulnerable to cold boot attacks, because even with physical access, the memory will not be readable. Increased memory limits also in this particular edition here. The 64-bit processor has a limit of 64 TBs, terabytes of physical memory, and 256 terabytes of virtual memory space. And some package updates here. Won't get into many of these, but they have updated some things here: secure socket, etc. Tunneling, and let's see what else that people would. I don't know. They probably not. Anyway, we'll link this on. And Hyper-V updates for those using Hyper-V to run Chile virtual machine powered by offensive security. You can find the Hyper-V virtual machine is now generation 2. We also have a new edition of the Oracle edition there. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is Kile. We'll put old Kile, up there. And let's move on here. There's some announcements here. Speakers at Open Source Summit. Submit your proposals by the 29th. Today is the 22nd, so you have to get about it. This is the North American Open Source Summit. Will be taking place August 29th and 31st in Vancouver, British Columbia. About 2,000 open source types will be there, community members, etc. And some of the tracks, cloud native apps, serverless microservices, infrastructure and automation, cloud and cloud native, and DevOps. Linux systems, artificial intelligence, big buzzword there, data analysis, and more. So this is from the Linux Foundation. Here we go. And Collabora Online 3.2 brings more powerful features to Libre. We put this in here because Libre software is a more advanced form of open source software. Michael Meeks of the Collabora Productivity has the pleasure of informing Salpeter today on the availability of Collabora Online 3.2, the second point release of Collabora 3 series, that promises yet another layer of new features and improvement to the enterprise-ready cloud-based Office suite, very similar to Microsoft's collection there. LibreOffice 6.1. We use LibreOffice here. And Collabora Online 3.2 introduced support for creating and inserting charts into Writer. We use Writer. We've used also Impress documents, and the ability to validate data in a Calc, which is their spreadsheet, which might come in handy for engineers who want to make a final assembly inspection in their tables. Many of our customers and partners have requested the ability to use data validation, which is frequently used to allow spreadsheets to be used, check lists, etc. out there. And let's see what else here. Columns, we won't go into all this, but it's also updated various translations ported from LibreOffice, as well as support warnings of when you're using multiple users for those who want to integrate Collabora Office Online Suite on their infrastructure. The release adds a new powerful scripting API. It shouldn't be amiss to try to download a demo of it. And I'm not at all... now this is Oracle VirtualBox release. They've upgraded their release for a fix for KD Plasma. We have KD Plasma, and somewhere here we'll find that. Let us move along here to a GitHub. Learning to use a GitHub, the lab. If you want to join, their estimate here is 27 million open source programs to develop on GitHub. That is from Linus Torvalds' GitHub open source distribution version control system. It's also an online home for collaboration, sandbox for testing, and launchpad for deployment. Platform learning new skills. The GitHub training team has now released GitHub Learning Lab. So this is from ZNet here. I don't know. We'll go to ZNet and get the rest. Basically, that was a short there. How many people use it, about it. GitHub's Lab is not a tutorial or a webcast, but it is an app that gets you on-hand learning experience with GitHub. I thought it was anyway. Our friendly bot will take you through a series of presses. Fun. Well, it should be good. It opens with 5 courses: Introduction to GitHub, communication, using Markdown, GitHub pages, and moving your project to GitHub and managing conflicts. Can't beat that. Oh. Okay. Now, this is another open source summit. This is in Tokyo on the 20th to 22nd of June. This is a technical conference for those that can make it there. Professional Open Source Summit is a leading conference in Japan. So the Open Source Summit 2018 will cover cornerstone open source technologies with sub-conference. They always do this at Linux Com and Linux Container Com and Linux Cloud Com. Oh, well, you heard it here. All right, we've already done that one. How to install Moodle. We use Moodle at university. Many universities use Moodle. It is a learning management system that are software-powered online education enabling teachers and trainers to share coursework. And it is an open source project. The Moodle is available for almost 2 decades. It's been around 20 years. Martin Dugamash of Curtin University student and worker who saw the possibility for improvements that became Moodle in 2001. It's been around a while. And in early 2018, over 2.4 million students worldwide from K to 12 through higher education use Moodle. So you can install Moodle packages there, and how to configure it. It does work with databases, and it will explain how to do that. Requires PHP and several other packets for language support and various other things. How to restart the service. We'll go into all that, but we thought we'd put something in for Moodle. Google Chrome 66 is now rolling out to Android and iOS users with new features. It was announced there. The browser enables a mute auto play feature by default, no longer starting streaming videos automatically. One of the big things here. We are not talking about new features for these platforms, and it now lets users explore passwords saved in a Chrome for users in other applications. Password export here, that's export was implemented in the settings there. You've been able to do that on Foxfire for a very long time, Mozilla. That was one of the new things. I guess we'll just leave it at that. In Oracle, this is the Oracle VirtualBox 5.2.10 with a fix for Katie Plasma hangs and other bugs announced there. They moved to some maintenance update. Is here, and 1.5 months after version of 5.2.8 fixes all critical security vulnerabilities in VirtualBox. If you're using VirtualBox, it allows the presence of multiple NVMe controllers. Anyway, won't get into all that. And let's see. Issues in a free DBS with guess. Yeah, you won't get much into that. Some critical patches that they put on. This is by Oracle. Wireless detection, regression. Some things they've added to it here. 10 also introduced small keyboard delay to fix older software issues where some programs expected to read incoming scan code several times. Anyway, you can download that particular one. Let me just switch horses here. Our time is good for once. We usually can't put that up. This was on the 19th of August, I believe. Of April. Why in August? This is from Canada and Rogers Cable there. Internet news with Rogers email are raising concerns about new terms of service that allows their communications to be monitored For advertising purposes, Reuters Communications, based in Toronto, Canada, has outsourced the email service it offers to Internet customers, giving them addresses that end in @Rogers.com to Yahoo for several years. The U.S. telecom giant Verizon acquired Yahoo last year and has since merged it with AOL to create a digital and media brand called ORF. Over the past week, Rogers and other Yahoo email accounts have been receiving pop-up messages when they log in, outlining new unified terms of service. This is from this ORF, our specified that ORF's analysis and content information. I got one of these from somewhere there, including in the Verizon Communicate. One of the other services. This allows us to deliver personalized development relative to features, content, and advertising services. The message concludes by stating that users will eventually need to agree to new terms of service and a privacy policy. People don't like it. Canadian users received similar messages from Yahoo in 2013. The updated terms of service heightens public concern about privacy and data use in the wake of a scandal over the data firm Cambridge Analytica's misuse of 87 million Facebook people, including more than 620,000 Canadians. In Canada, the Federal Policy Committee launched a hearing over the controversy Tuesday with Privacy Communications Commissioner, Daniel Forin as the first witness. In general, in Canada and in Europe, they take a different situation. A guy named Stephen, a Rogers Internet subscriber from Toronto, did not want his last name used, because of it could jeopardize his employment. Said in the interview that he has not been able to get satisfactory issues from the Rogers Communications people. Many customers posting on decline to disclose the number of Internet customers that use Rogers.com thing. And this is something that's forcing more and more people to go to their own .com, abc.com or whatever, because of all these terms that many of the bigger ones are attaching, privacy terms. So we'll see how that affects, and also how it affects independent ISPs. But again, you go through gateways many times, as we used to be an ISP. If you go, say, for instance, as we did through the AT&T gateway, or the Sprint gateway, or I can't think who they were now. They went out of business. Or MCI. Anyway, and we go on here. Tamara Israel, a staff attorney with the Canadian Internet Project and a public interest clinic in Ottawa, added that Rogers presumably pays Yahoo for the service, so there is no need to monetize through advertising. Israel's downplayed fears related to the Facebook problem there with Cambridge Analytica. Other terms in the new policy include limiting customers' legal rights. Now, this is where it gets to be very, very serious. And a right to pursue a class action are largely unenforceable in Canada. Many of our Rogers Internet subscribers have chosen the optional Yahoo email server available to them. That's some spokesman for the Rogers Communications. And we'll finish this up. The launch of unified ORP privacy policy and terms of service is a key stepping stone towards creating what will be next for our customers, while empowering them. I'm not sure how they empower them. That's an ORP spokesman named Charles Stewart. We'll have to put that in. And let's see as we move along here. Don't skip on IT training. This is from Tech Republic. 27% of workers fall prey to phishing attacks. And some numbers here: 17% of social engineering attacks are successful and can only lead, to a compromise in the entire corporate infrastructure. That is from Positive Technologies 2018. 27% of workers check an email phishing a link, making it the most effective method of social engineering. Again, that's from the Positive people. I assume they're paying for this. The firm studied 10 of the largest pen testing projects performed by clients for 2018-2017, and they tested 3,332 emails sent to workers with links to websites, password entry forms, etc. You always have to watch those. And according to the report, phishing was the most effective form of social engineering attacks. 27%. That is not bad. Workers not only open unknown files and click suspicious links, they sometimes correspond with attackers without literally knowing it. So we thought we'd put that little update in there. And this is from the Register. A lot of people use it. Anyway, 20 years ago today, Windows 98. We won't forget Windows 98. For those that were around in that era. We were doing a lot of break and fix at Cranston at the time, so we encountered Windows 98. But that was a glorious time for Linux also. And we used total Linux systems other than we had a test box, I believe, for that. Anyway, Crash live on stage with Bill Gates. Something to remember from way back then, period. And I always have a few, some CEO here insists his email was on a server that hadn't been online, for years. I'm not sure who that is. You always get something. We'll have to look at that one. Just to sort of break the situation. OnCalc, welcome again to OnCalc. Anyway, CEO insists that when the dot-com bubble burst, the surviving techies learned the true meaning of just-in-time training. This week, meet Sam, who used to work for one of those zombie web companies that disappeared. The company no longer has a proper sysman, so proper IT operation had been replaced with frequent bursts of panic, which was quite often one of Sam's colleagues, whose type could pick up any language in seconds. The only problem was that he tended to write code with very little error checking there. That used to be pretty common. The lack of sysmen also meant that the company endured things like servers running out of space. It happens there. That was basically a giant curtain address book. Anyway, every night it grabbed a zip file. Remember zip files? And extended XAML files to create updates there. It was context. Backups, remember his company had no sysmem, but it did have Sam, and he finally got back into a serviceable state. And you think the company would learn from that, and of course that it didn't. A noble idea, but one night the email service corrupted its disk. That happens quite a bit. It happened to us recently. Anyway, the task of bringing it back up landed on my lap. I started my journey through vaguely knowing how grip works, to fixing a broken email server. He did lots of Googling, and finally the mail server came up, and I watched the first message start rolling out, and I went home. The following morning, the client raged in panic. They're getting a huge number of bounce messages from us, and Sam, now the residential expert, was pressed into service. It quickly became obvious what was happening. When the code found a new email, it sent on a bounce message. That's happened to many people. Marked the email as read. It didn't delete it or move it to a new location. It just marked it as read, and it didn't check what actually worked. When the email server crashed, it trashed the table. Now that's nasty. Every few minutes, a Siron task went looking for unread messages there. I never found out how many emails we flooded the clients with. The incident had a funny sequel a year later. By this time, Sam's company had moved to Gmail. He kindly provided everyone with detailed instructions how to transfer their email across. And that was done. He announced he would be decommissioning the old server, but the CEO refused to let me take it offline, claiming the contents of the old emails I needed. The last Sam heard, about 4 years after he quit, the CEO still insisted the email server remain online. But he didn't have noticed that I pulled the network cable before I quit, and it was still on, and he was happy. So that's kind of an interesting story there. I thought we'd have that. Kapowski, let's see. Violated the ad policy they claim. This is on Twitter. Decision is based upon our determination of Kapowski's lab operated using a business model that inherently conflict with acceptable terms for Twitter. May remain organic use on our platform in accordance with Twitter use, and is no longer running ads from its beleaguered security vendor Kapowski. That's sort of a round thing. When you're up, you're up. When you're down, you're down. In the meantime, Kapowski says it's making the best of the situation by converting its Twitter advertising budget to charitable donations to the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Eugene Kapowski also issued an open letter to the Twitter CEO Dorsey, blasting the move and claiming the policy will put Twitter users at risk. The majority of our promotional content on Twitter, and I have retweeted there, as with many others, has been about cybersecurity and research and reports about information security industry. We believe that the contents bring value to a variety of Twitter users, including regular folks who want to read single tips on how to protect themselves against cyber theft, as well as info security experts who are interested in the technical details of our latest research. And they do put this up, and I've looked at it before, is playing into the hands of cyber criminals. Twitter is, and it hinders us from there. So in other words, you'll have to go to the Kapowski site now to find out what's going on. Google Voice is finally testing making phone calls over Wi-Fi. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, Google Voice only allows you to place phone calls over your device cellular network. Many offices, school buildings have poor network connections, making quality spots at best. And placing calls over a much more reliable Wi-Fi network, however, will ensure that you always are able to make the call and receive calls through your Google Voice number. Plus, you can now use your tablet to make calls. This is according to a post on the official Google Voice help forum and Android Police, using approximately 2 megabytes of data per minute, enabling the calling feature in the setting, the Wi-Fi calling feature. We'll have to put this up. Currently, a few known issues there. Let me just go over to this quickly here. And we'll see as soon as it comes up. Hello, Google Voice users. Be the first to try our calling over Wi-Fi mobile data directly from a Google Voice application. Reduce roaming charges, etc. Sign up a form there, update your Google Voice app. We'll have to do all of that. Anyway, we'll have that up here. And one last announcement here. This is the Texas Linux Fest. This will be on June the 8th and June the 9th in Austin, Texas. Some very interesting things going on here. We'll put a link to it and some of the tracks that they have. Linux Chaos Engineering is one track, open source city. This is government data, contents as an API. Very interesting stuff going on here. Fun with Python systems utilizing analysis using Python scripting. Introduction to Linux performance tuning. What's new in Kubernetes? I'm sorry about that. Besides everything. Anyway, identity burnout and actions to prevent yourself from burning out. That'd be an interesting to go to. That's in one of the tracks on a Friday, the first day, I guess. And let's see what else here. Adding a pie. Anyway, some lightning talks here. There's some very interesting things here. This is just where the conference center is. Let me get back to it. Texas Hats there in Austin, Texas. Now that the Austin bomber is dead, people at least can rest there. And let me see on registration. A list of presentations unique to your interest. Links are being worked on. And a list of speakers are also available. And some of the speakers here, Matt Mullins, I don't know. He is a production engineer at Facebook. And been supporting HBates. We'll go through some of this. Sean Dugan is a development advocate at IBM. So I see so far most of these people are corporate types. Zen and Home Assistance. He's president and founder of the Mid-Hudson Bay Linux Users Group. Has been running, which has been run for 15 years, a long time there. Tammy Butto is a principal site reliability engineer at Gremlin. I don't know where Gremlin is. And anyway, she's previously worked in security engineering, etc. in Australia, I see. And Bill Beck is an open source advocate that focuses on open source in education. Paul Clark, software architect in IBM's Linux Technology Center, working on tools for porting, etc. I work with those people quite a bit in the past. Still out here as a IBM reseller, and we're still at the IBM Developers Forum. Anyway, let's see. Cece Coretta is a software engineer at Return Path. Worked on a number of things, including PHP and Go. And is a chapter leader in girls development in Austin, Texas. She also does Ruby on Rails. Tom Cameron, he's a principal cloud evangelist, they call himself. I never liked that word, propagandist. Anyway, at Red Hat, he's been in information technology industry since 1993, and Red Hat since 2005. A certified Novell engineer, you won't find very many of those. A Microsoft certified person, a certified Red Hat data center specialist. Boy, he's everything all at once here. And let's see here. Oops. I'll finish this up. I thought I'd just spotlight a few of these people. The Kubernetes person here, an OpenShift team leader. He's at Red Hat. Seth Jennings is his name. Jason Yee is a technologist type at Datadog. Been around. And another web developer here, Paul Bailey. FireWeb. In the Python community and Python, Texas, whatever. And let's see. Alex Juarez is a principal engineer at Rackspace. Hadn't heard much from them. 11 years experience at old Rackspace. Don't hear much of them anymore at all. But anyway, they're there. And Nicole Barada. She is a strategist for Red Hat Chicks and Tech in Austin, Texas, from England. And let's see. Oh, we do have someone here from a software engineer for Indeed and Ubuntu core developer. He has been debugging Linux systems since 2004. David Chilick. And let's see. Ruby D, another person here. I'm not sure what that is. And finally, Aaron Randall is a Agile course at Macmillan Learning in Austin, Texas. And let's see who else we have here. And someone else from Netu Juin, from Watson and the IBM Cloud. And let's see who else we have here. They've been adding people. And Matthew Barlock, his background is in software engineering, etc. Spare time. Flying planes. Oh, well. So this is a list of speakers. I guess they finally got their list straight here. And we went over the venues earlier. And of the tracks. Anyway, and I guess registration is finally open. A list of presentations, a list of speakers are also available. So, in other words, yeah. Some of their presentations here. We already talked about Linux chaos engineering there, and open source city, that is city data. Here, screens and video recording with SBS Studio. A little bit tinkering with that. That's Brian Beck. Track 5 and so forth and so on. We won't go into all of these. We'll just put a link there. And Kubernetes is big. And even touchscreen, making your Android Linux your development environment there. Termu and Android a terminal emulator, and Linux environment means in process that you can do almost anything you do in a full development Linux development environment on your phone and other Android devices. That'd be kind of interesting there. And that is Paul Bailey has that one up there. And embedded Linux operating system. Some nice tracks here. To we won't get much into that. Using Let's encryption with Kubernetes. A lot of Kubernetes in this. The cows are stalking us. I'm not sure what that is. And once you get the Linux server up and running, what's next? Security, of course. No doubt about that. Roxy D will share with you her top server hardening techniques. And let's see what else we got here. Pi. Anyway, those are the presentations, and I guess we already went through the list of speakers, also available here, and we'll put a link to the Texas Linux Festival, and so we have all this information here for the audience out there. Anyway, this will do it for us. The open source report on the 22nd of April 2018. We always start our broadcast off with Ubuntu, and we hear from the late Nelson Mandela on what the concept of Ubuntu, our community, is, and so people will understand what open source actually is. In Libre, free software, free hardware, this is what we are propagandizing around. And this broadcast is a very good way to do it. We use Twitter primarily to advance events like the Texas Linux Festival and the work of the Open Source Foundation. This is not an individual organization effort. This is a collective effort, such as a GitHub out there with millions of people participating. And so that the correct messages go out there. A lot of people that don't make it to the conference, we understand that. I'm not sure how many will be at the Texas Linux Festival, several hundred. At the meeting or conclave in BC, over 2,000 people will be there. But that's a small part of people that are involved in various open source projects, that are involved with the many Linux distributions. We use, of course, Slackware. And there's Red Hat out there. There's SenseOS. There's the penetration one, Keeley. There are all kinds of very specific Linux distributions out there. But the whole idea is the cloud is a backbone for Linux, or is the Linux backbone is the cloud. And what we try to do here is separate out the commercial hype, and at the same time give these various enterprise people that donate code their credit, and try to predict. We do more of that in Numbers Man. That's our macroeconomics program. We put a little bit in. At one time, we did have a special program on the economics of IT. We don't have that now, but what we try to talk about is where the industry is going, particularly with things like autonomous automobiles. I noticed they didn't have anything like that at the Linux Fest there, nor did they have in Austin the diversity of the Linux movement. That needs to be stressed, no doubt about it, because many of the newer enterprises, including a Starbucks, for those that have heard about it, crass discrimination involved there, the privacy around Facebook, the Rogers Communications and privacy there. There are a lot of security issues that affect ordinary people, particularly privacy. We talk about this all the time, and we want to make certain that this is in our broadcast. It may not be at some of the Linux meetings. I remember speaking to what was it? In Android Developers Conference, and we talked about diversity, history of diversity, and Operation Push, the corporate project, which had an office still in New York, on Wall Street, to push corporations to diversify for the larger community, which is much more important today than 20 years ago. With space rented by none other than DJ Trump, who is currently the president of the U.S., and had a little auto clip from Facebook via C-SPAN. He was receiving a Push's Recognition Award for his contribution to African Americans. And thus came DJ Trump live. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have a feed there in an archival feed. We don't have it, so you'll not see that, and we didn't record it. Anyway, nonetheless, those are the kinds of things we've been pushing. And the campaign office out in Silicon Valley, we are still working on that. And many of the people that show up at these meetings, whether it be in Vancouver, Canada, or in Austin, Texas, the Rack Mountain, those kinds of people, we need to look at their employment policies as to whom they are employing and their impact on our communities, such as Rogers has an impact on people in Canada, in the Toronto area, etc. And of course, Yahoo, now part of Verizon. And Verizon has an extreme type of impact on communities, particularly communities of color. And we look at AT&T. AT&T, some of these corporations have better records than others, the larger ones. But Microsoft's is skimpy there, and so is Amazon. Now, we've been partnering over at the political unit with the Washington Post, which is owned by Amazon. The Post has been doing a much better job of coverage of communities of color, particularly African American, Latinos, and also the news staff there has been much more diverse under Mr. Bias' leadership there and ownership of the Washington Post. So those are some of the things there. And of course, IBM has been around since the 60s in the forefront, not as much as before. We have to keep it on them, particularly as they have Watson centers in Nairobi, Kenya. Those are some of the things we do, not only promoting business, African American business, Latino business, whether it be in Puerto Rico or whether it be in Nairobi, Kenya, or businesses in China. It's all one large community. And open source, the Chinese are using more and more of it. There are embedded devices out there. We see more and more of that. Let me just pause just a minute here. We have to get in the containers from Mozilla. Many times in our conclusion here, nonetheless, Firefox has a new Facebook container that limits Facebook's ability to track users across the internet. We use it. Is now facing scrutiny. That is Facebook after Cambridge Analytica. The Mozilla Foundation, which runs Foxfire, has rolled out a browser extension called Facebook Container. It's pretty much all there is in the name. When you open Facebook, it has a special blue tab. When you do something away from the Facebook site, it loads that in the blue tab. Instead of that, that's the whole idea. It limits Facebook's ability to track you across the internet. Most people didn't know about that. Although it's not perfect, other additions will be, and it won't prevent Cambridge Analytica leaks to be fair, but that was a breach caused in part by defective data practices at Facebook. And then we actually have the container here and where to go and get the container. We thought we would bring that up and make sure that you're aware of the Facebook container if you use Mozilla's Foxfire products. And we'll have more in future broadcasts as they will update it, and various people here that have it out there. And if we have some additional things, we'll put it in links. Nonetheless, this will do it for us. Finally, have a good week, everyone.